Good morning, America. Winter storm emergency. Those two storms about to collide and wreak havoc across 35 states. Kansas to New York and Maine bracing for snow, rain and ice. Spinouts already across the Midwest and lightning igniting this pickup truck down south. Now more than 1,000 flights canceled. Our team is across the storm zone.
Also this morning, President Trump is denying that new report, claiming he asked his former acting attorney general if he could intervene in the Michael Cohen hush money investigation.
New question for Jussie Smollett. The FBI now investigating whether the Empire star played a role in sending that threatening letter to himself.
Chilling new details in the case of that missing mom who disappeared on Thanksgiving. Her fiancé now in shackles charged with murder. How her parents may have found evidence investigators missed.
Actress Mandy Moore's candid revelation about her marriage to singer Ryan Adams, calling their relationship entirely unhealthy.
I felt like I was drowning.
As he now faces sexual misconduct allegations from multiple women.
And star power shower. Duchess Meghan taking Manhattan by storm. How she's celebrating her baby-to-be with superstar Serena Williams and more.
Live in Times Square, this is GMA with Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, and Michael Strahan.
And good morning, America. Meghan may have to get out ahead of the storm.
I know. We want to get right to those two storms that are colliding, bringing heavy snow and ice to the north. Take a live look at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And then that's the White House? Wow.
Yeah, it's like a whiteout.
Yeah.
And down south, take a look at the torrential rain. That's sparking a lot of fear of the flooding this morning as those commuters are on their way to work. And we're going to go right to Ginger, who's starting our coverage here in Times Square. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, Michael. That snow in Washington, D.C. will be creeping from south to north and will be here after noon, the noon hour. So look for it there. It's going to change to sleet, then rain. But let's look at Minneapolis, where it will stay all snow, and they should end up with somewhere between 6 and 9 inches of snow. That's what it looks like on the roads already this morning. Schools are closed there. We've got winter weather advisories from Chicago through Detroit all the way into New England. And I want to bring you through this storm because there's severe storms on the southern end for Mississippi. The snow has already started in Virginia and West Virginia. So let's go ahead and begin with Stephanie Ramos, who's in Charlottesville, Virginia this morning, where it's been snowing for the last couple of hours. Stephanie?
Ginger, good morning. This is a massive snowstorm here in Charlottesville, Virginia. You can see the roads are covered and the snow is wet and it's heavy. We set this cup out about an hour or so ago. You can see it's filling up. About 2 to 3 inches of snow has fallen across this area. And this is what major cities along the I-95 corridor are going to be dealing with today. 35 states from Kansas to Maine slammed with snow, rain, and ice. Overnight, slick, icy conditions making for some dangerous commutes, forcing cars in New Mexico to spin out of control. Kansas resembling a frozen tundra. Plows unable to keep up. Roads and highways littered with vehicles ending up off-road. Good Samaritans and officers stopping to help drivers by pushing and pulling. These pickup trucks slipping and sliding as they try to get a tractor-trailer back on the road. Drivers trying to navigate the winter storm conditions. This school bus sliding right off the road. Luckily, no kids on board, the driver not hurt. The extreme weather stretching south. In Sterlington, Louisiana, this pickup truck struck by lightning, then exploding into a fireball. The driver escaping unharmed. The snow is falling hard here right now, but it will eventually turn into an icy mix and then rain later on this afternoon. And that heavier rain is what could cause some flooding across the Mid-South. George?
Yeah, Stephanie, thanks. We're going to get to that right now. ABC Steve Osunsami is in Nashville, Tennessee. And Steve, Nashville's been getting drenched by rain all month long.
That's right, George. By the time this is all over, Nashville could have its wettest February on record. Across the South today, up to 3 inches of rain could fall in certain places. Flash flood and river flood warnings are up across several states. But I want you to take a good look at this. This is a live picture of Reagan National Airport, which is leading the way in flight cancellations this morning. Reagan and Baltimore, third of all flights at those airports are canceled. More than 1,000 flights are canceled across the country. The airlines are offering travel waivers for people who can't travel today. Here in the south, this rain is expected to continue through the weekend as another storm system moves in. Robin?
We're going to talk about that, Steve. Thank you. We're going to go back to Ginger. What's the latest on the track and timing, Ginger?
And that's the thing, so critical. I've even got family flying in today, so let me time it out for you hour by hour here. Most importantly, it is that transition from snow and those strong storms this afternoon in the south, but that snow there that changes to rain in Washington, D.C. by the drive time tonight. New York City, the drive tonight going to be a wreck. That's where the snow is really coming in. It will then in Philadelphia be changing at drive time into that ice and eventually rain overnight. So that's how the timing works. By tomorrow, it's all over, but you will end up seeing a lot of that ice still on the roads. George.
All right, messy day ahead. Okay, Ginger, thanks very much. Now to breaking news overseas, a new threat from Russian President Vladimir Putin. In his State of the Union address, Putin promised to target the U.S. with new missiles if America deploys medium-range missiles to Europe. This comes on the heels of the U.S. withdrawal from the treaty that banned those missiles in Europe. Putin also denied the U.S. claim that Russia had violated the treaty and warned he would develop weapons that could hit U.S. decision-making centers. To the White House now, and that new report detailing President Trump's campaign to derail the investigations of his campaign. The president is denying the New York Times report that he asked the acting attorney general if he could replace the prosecutor investigating Michael Cohen's hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Our senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega has the latest. Good morning, Cecilia.
Hey, George, good morning to you. This report is raising even more questions about possible obstruction of justice, just as the special counsel appears close to wrapping up his investigation.
From President Trump, an adamant denial.
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that.
He's refuting a New York Times report claiming he asked his former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to interfere in the investigation into hush money paid to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal.
There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't.
The paper says that as federal prosecutors investigated those payments, the president asked Whitaker to appoint a more sympathetic U.S. attorney to lead the probe. According to the Times, the president's pick, Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, who had already recused himself because of his close ties to the president's current lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. The Department of Justice firing back, saying Whitaker stands by his testimony to Congress.
At no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided, any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation.
But as for that specific investigation in New York, no denial from Whitaker.
Did you ever have any conversations with anybody about reassigning or firing any personnel, including U.S. attorneys with the Southern District of New York?
Congresswoman, I sit on top of the Department of Justice, as you mentioned.
Well, in the end, President Trump ended up praising Whitaker, saying that he's got a lot of respect for him. But Democrats on Capitol Hill are much more critical. The House Judiciary Committee is asking whether Whitaker lied under oath during that testimony. And, George, they now want him back for more questioning.
Okay, see, thanks. Let's bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. Dan, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about first this reported phone call from the president to the acting attorney general. He calls him and says, hey, can I replace the prosecutor? How bad?
So it's not just the issue that the Department of Justice is supposed to be autonomous, right? The Department of Justice is supposed to be this place where they make the decisions for themselves. The reason this is particularly inappropriate is because this relates to the president himself. It's not just about the president calling the Department of Justice and trying to impact an investigation. It's an investigation that impacts him himself. Now, with that said, you read this report carefully, and it does not say that Whitaker was ordered, was directed. He was asked about it. So the question becomes, when you look at the details, did the president just call him and say, hey, how does this thing work? Can Berman be back in there, the Southern District of New York person who'd recused himself, or is this the sort of thing that can't be changed?
And that might be inappropriate but not illegal. But the question is, when you look at the entire pattern, the firing of James Comey, the threats against the investigation, the threats against Robert Mueller, the attacks from the president, does that add up to obstruction of justice? What does Mueller do about it? What can Congress do about it?
Well, that's the ultimate question. It certainly means that this report rings true. This certainly seems like something President Donald Trump would do and probably did do. Does it rise to the level of obstruction of justice? Comes down to the question of how much power does one think that the president has to do whatever he wants. And if you believe that the president has the authority to call the Department of Justice, change things to the Department of Justice, even if it impacts him.
Even if it's ill-motivated.
Even if it's ill-motivated, even if it has corrupt motive, meaning to protect himself. If you think he's got that absolute power, then it's not obstruction of justice. But there's no question this is an effort, if you believe it, to obstruct justice. The question is that a legal obstruction of justice?
Dan Abrams, thanks very much. Michael?
All right, thank you, George. And now to that new twist in the Jussie Smollett case. The FBI is now investigating whether the actor played a role in sending that threatening letter to himself a week before the incident. Eva Pilgrim is in Chicago with the latest. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Michael. This morning, growing questions for Jussie Smollett. This as those two men who say the actor paid them were seen here at this courthouse. We're told they were talking to investigators and prosecutors.
This morning, the Jussie Smollett case widening, with both the FBI and U.S. Postal Inspection Service now investigating this threatening letter and whether the Empire star played a role in sending it to himself. The explicit letter, which made homophobic and racist threats against the actor, was sent to Empire Chicago studios on January 22nd. He spoke to ABC News about it last week.
On the letter, it had a stick figure hanging from a tree with a gun pointing towards it, with the words that said, "Smollett Jussie, you will die, black." There was no address, but the return address said in big red, like caps, MAGA. Did I make that up too?
Sources confirming to ABC News it's now being analyzed in an FBI crime lab. About a week after receiving the threat, Smollett called police after an alleged racist and homophobic attack.
Empire's not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on an artist that would try to take us down.
Investigators also looking into allegations that Smollett himself staged that attack with the help of these two brothers who have not been charged.
Smollett has maintained his innocence, his lawyer saying he has now been further victimized by claims attributed to these alleged perpetrators that Jussie played a role in his own attack. Nothing is further from the truth, and anyone claiming otherwise is lying.
What you want me to do? Y'all want some money?
This coming as 2007 court documents show Smollett was accused of giving false statements to the LAPD, allegedly impersonating his brother during a traffic stop. At the time, the actor was charged with false impersonation, driving under the influence, and driving without a valid license. He reportedly pleaded no contest to reduce charges and completed an alcohol treatment program. Smollett's team has reached out to well-known defense attorney Mark Garagos. He's represented high-profile clients like Michael Jackson. They talked to him about representing the actor. No decision this morning. Robin.
Eva, is there any indication when he will make himself available to talk to police again?
We have not heard any indication from police or from his team when he will talk to police. We have been told from his team that they have an open communication with authorities. Robin.
All right, Eva, thank you. Now to an ABC News exclusive, with an American ISIS bride now hoping to be allowed back home more than 4 years after she left the U.S. to join the Islamic State. She sat down with James Longman, who was there in Syria for us. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Robin. For 4 years, Hoda Muthanna lived in the so-called Islamic State. A 19-year-old from Alabama, she says she was drawn to the terror cult by online forums of extremists. We found her here in Syria in a camp, alone with her 18-month-old son, begging to come back to the United States.
Speaking for the first time on television, 24-year-old Hoda Muthanna says she was radicalized and brainwashed by a secret Twitter group of up to 3,000 ISIS youth.
When I was 17, I had an account on Twitter, and we were all just normal Muslims speaking together, and we were just learning off of each other, feeding off of each other. We heard the caliphate was announced, and then we interpreted ourselves that it was obligatory upon us to go.
In November of 2014, she left her family and friends in Alabama, crossing into Syria. Locked in a safe house, she says her only choice was marriage.
Does that sound crazy to you now?
Sounds very crazy.
She married an Australian jihadi. He was dead in 3 months. Her next husband, the father of her now 18-month-old son, also killed. I asked if she knew about ISIS atrocities.
We didn't see much, but what we did see, when we did see it, we would see dead bodies in public.
Her friends and family say before Muthanna traveled to Syria, she was a kind and quiet teenager.
She was gentle, she was smiling, and nobody could have ever imagined that she would join a group of that violent nature.
She says war has changed her, but she does admit helping spread ISIS propaganda in the past, calling for attacks on Americans on Twitter. Saying in one tweet, Americans wake up, go on drive-bys and spill all of their blood.
Do you feel shame when you hear that back?
Very much, yeah.
What do you think would be a kind of a normal
Maybe
thing?
therapy lessons, maybe a process that will ensure us that we'll never do this again. Jail time, I don't know if that has an effect on people.
I don't know if you've quite grasped how awful ISIS was to the communities. The Yazidi women that were enslaved, the men and women who were accused of being homosexual who were pushed off buildings. Do you feel regret and sorrow and remorse for being part of an organization like ISIS?
Definitely. It's not Islamic at all. I believe that 100%.
The lawyer representing the Mothana family says she's ready to face justice here in the United States if she's allowed to come home.
She's trying to redeem herself, and right now we're just waiting the U.S. government to take action.
If she does come back to the United States, she can expect severe punishment. But dealing with returning jihadis is complex. A British ISIS woman who also wants to go home has now found out the UK is to revoke her citizenship. Guys?
You know, James pressed her in the right way right there. If she comes back to the United States, these were serious, potentially very serious crimes she was engaged in, so she would have to face trial, have to face justice, despite, you know, whatever sympathy people might feel for her.
That's true. That's true, George.
All right, well, we're going to turn now from that to the new details about who will be taking the Oscars stage with just 4 days to go. TJ Holmes, he is already there in Hollywood with more. Good morning, TJ.
Yeah, and I am on a plastic-covered red carpet. They had to keep this thing protected for the real stars who are going to come up these steps and go to a controversial show, and we're starting to get a better idea of what a hostless Oscars is going to look like.
The Academy just added more A-listers to its growing list of presenters at Sunday's highly anticipated Academy Awards. Helen Mirren, Michael B. Jordan, and Michael Keaton will join already announced presenters like Tina Fey, Whoopi Goldberg, and Jennifer Lopez during Sunday's hostless broadcast.
And the Oscar goes to?
This year's unconventional road to the Oscars has left many big questions about what should be expected from the 91st Academy Awards. Last week, the show's producers announced they'd be cutting 4 categories from the live broadcast to save time. But after overwhelming backlash from the Hollywood elite, those categories are back in.
We are outside theater number 6.
So how will they keep the show short? First off, no more surprising, unsuspecting fans.
You are live on the Oscars right now.
As host Jimmy Kimmel did last year to moviegoers in this nearby theater. And when Kevin Hart bowed out as host after controversy over some past tweets, producers embraced the idea of going hostless and think that could also save time. And the impressive list of celeb presenters will take on some big responsibilities now. A slew of non-Hollywood stars are expected to give speeches about Best Picture nominees, like Serena Williams, who is set to present A Star is Born.
The goal is 3 hours on Sunday on ABC. We'll see how it goes, guys.
Okay, we'll see the over and under on that 3 hours. Thank you. Sunday night here on ABC. Ginger.
And you can see the local weather in 30 seconds. First, though, the snowy cities brought to you by Capital One.
Building a better bank starts with looking at something old and saying, really? So Capital One is building something completely new. Capital One Cafes. Inviting places with people here to help you, not sell you. And savings and checking accounts with no fees or minimums, because that's how it should be. You can open one from right here or anywhere in 5 minutes. Seriously, 5 minutes. This is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
It is snowing across the area right now and will throughout the morning. Everyone getting some pretty good snow here until about 10 to 11 a.m. Temperatures will rise and will allow us to transition to the sleet, the little pinging, and then eventually to rain, freezing on contact. That's when area roads could get really slick. Eventually, temperatures come up, upper 30s. We're looking at rain and fog, but first a quick 3 to 5 inches. I-95 almost down to the south, 70 degrees with a high on Sunday.
In the suspected murder of that Colorado mom, Kelsey Barrett.
How about that? 7's on your side right now with live local news from Good Morning Washington.
19 right now, and welcome to our Good Morning America viewers who are just joining us on this